with the release of Deadpool and Wolverine coming up today, we're counting down my top 5 X-Men films of all time. Hit the credit. All right, so we are excluding the Deadpool films here just because of the fact that it will completely change my X-Men lineup here. We're just doing out of the 13 X-Men films that came out to my top 5. Is it controversial to you? I don't know. Tell me your top 5 and put it in the comments down below. So we're starting out my top 5 list with X-Men Apocalypse. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, wait, you actually liked X-Men Apocalypse? You like the ooze from the Power Ranger villain type guy? Yeah, actually, I really did enjoy that movie because of one, Magneto's character in that film was absolutely unhinged. She was absolutely perfect. Michael Fassbender, actually, because I rewatched Days of Future Past with my girlfriend because she hasn't seen all the X-Men films yet. And that movie, like, I realized, like, compared to Ian McKellen's Magneto, Michael Fassbender's Magneto is one of the most interesting X-Men characters I have seen in a very long time. I love his Magneto. I love that scene in the forest with all those cops and everything with his daughter and his wife and just them getting annihilated and him just going completely unhinged. Not to mention, like, we got to see the moment with Magneto and Quicksilver, which we didn't really get before, you know, because we got snubbed out of the entire franchise with Nightcrawler and Mystique. But Apocalypse is one of those films that definitely deserves to be in my top 5. I'm not an overly critical type of person. I go in, I want to have fun, I want to see lore, I want to see perfect good storytelling, and I really did enjoy the telling of X-Men Apocalypse and the story that I decided to tell. We get to finally see James McAvoy's bald head become the Charles Xavier that we know and love. I know it took a lot of convincing for the studio, had to get that man to shave his head, and we love the man all the better. We could go around all day long talking about exactly why X-Men Apocalypse deserves to be in my top 5, but I want to move right on along so you guys can put yours in the comments down below and we can all enjoy Deadpool and Wolverine together tonight. Number 4 is gonna be X-Men Days of Future Past. Days of Future Past, of course, following the comic book line, leaving out a few omissions here and there, like Kitty Pryde not going back in the past with Wolverine herself. Days of Future Past to me was perfect. It came right after First Class and also the Wolverine, which the Wolverine at the end of set up the terms for Days of Future Past and everything with its after credits scene and whatnot. Days of Future Past, to me, I felt was the perfect ending to the original X-Men trilogy, with Wolverine and Charles Xavier meeting the new prequel cast that we got set up from X-Men First Class. And overall told a great story that had a lot of comedic moments, a lot of great deep moments with Charles Xavier kind of hinting at his kind of drug addicted past from the comic line. And overall just had a great story to tell. X-Men Days of Future Past had one of those stories that was just immaculate from start to finish, especially going into the kind of like what the thing that I love the most about the X-Men franchise of live action. The MCU didn't do this too much, but the X-Men line definitely did. It's kind of tying real world events into it. So we getting JFK as a mutant and that Magneto was actually trying to save him but accidentally got shot and they ended up killing JFK, putting him ultimately in the prison. I think was really cool. I love those kind of mix of real world events mixed with the X-Men events. It's really dope. We also got to see Quicksilver, played by Evan Peters, for the very first time. We get to see him later on in other iterations, but also in WandaVision. We don't know if that's going to pan out to anything. The MCU hasn't really done a great justice at panning out the rest of this universe, but that is nowhere here nor there. Ultimately, at the end of the day, X-Men Days of Future Past kind of stood definitely on this top 5 list for me, from its ultimate storytelling into the interwovenness of Charles Xavier and Magneto and how like their characters have changed since X-Men First Class, and also Wolverine kind of stepping up and really altering his character by being the point of reason and all of this to make sure that the future of X-Men get to stay. Not to mention, it also changed the outlook of the entirety of the X-Men line by creating 2 separate timelines throughout the X-Men universe. So we get to see the X-Men First Class fly, and it's not setting up to the original, but it's also charting its own course as well. So that is my number 4, X-Men Days of Future Past. Now on my number 3, which is going to be extremely controversial to a lot of you. And coming in at my number 3 is The New Mutants. I know a lot of you guys probably say in the comments, it's like New Mutants, oh my god, this, blah, 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 Sunspot. Then it has super curly hair like he does in the comics or this or that. It, it was a great story. It was different. That's what I loved the most. That's why it is in my top 5. It was extremely different. It took horror and X-Men and put them together. Not to mention the cast. You got some heavy hitters. You got Misa Williams from Game of Thrones making her movie debut in X-Men New Mutants, which I think she played in something before this, but I digress. Her character as Wolfsbane was amazing. Anya Taylor-Joy as Ileana Rasputin was amazing. Loved her character arc. So yes, she could be kind of an asshole. Yes, she kind of set things into motion. But ultimately, at the end of the day, she had an amazing character arc from there. I really enjoyed their version of Sunspot here. Sunspot, like, we only got to see a little bit of him in Days of Future Past and everything, and he also was in X-Men 97, but we haven't really got to see much of him up until this point, so it was a really cool nod to him, and the character, the actor who played him, did a phenomenal job. Charlie Heaton as Cannonball. He is from Stranger Things, you all know and love. He did a great job playing this kind of awkward character who just can't really get his powers down. Of course, rounded out with the main star, Mirage, who was kind of setting all of this in motion, just making everything seem very horroristic. It was just an overall amazing story. It was new. It was exciting. It was great. And I don't really understand the hate that it got. I think a lot of it came from the fact that it got so many delays added to it. I actually have a movie poster of the New Mutants when it's just a title screen with its original release date sitting in my room right now. The movie is amazing. I got to see it years and years after. I actually saw it this year for the first time, and I really just enjoyed it overall. That's exactly why New Mutants is in my top 5. You guys can shout out exactly why you dislike the film in the comments down below. But ultimately, this is my top 5. Really love to see yours. Now, coming in as my number 2, you guys might know and love it. You might think it might be higher. You might think it might be lower, but then definitely have to go with Logan. Logan is the end of Wolverine. They set up on their own course, kind of following the line of the Old Man Logan line of comics in its own little way. Of course, they couldn't use Hulk or a lot of the other attributes that came to that comic book line. But at the end of the day, it was an amazing film. We got to see the introduction to Daphne King's X-23, which is absolutely amazing. She was a ruthless child, just completely lost and just wanting to do her own thing, even though she was trapped in there for so long. Just really kind of, she took so well to that character being the age that she was. I think she was 12 when she played that character for the first time. Did an amazing job. Got to see the breaking down of Charles Xavier and how he could absolutely end the world if he really wanted to, along with a bunch of amazing characters that we got along that line. And then sadly, at the end of it all, got to see the end of Wolverine and Logan and Hugh Jackman that we thought was going to be the end of his run as James Howlett, Logan, Wolverine, all that. He said it was going to be his last, but of course he had to come back for Deadpool and Wolverine and round it out. So he always said that if he had to play Wolverine again, he definitely wants to be in the MCU. He wants to fight Hulk. I hope we get to see that before he hangs up the claws for good. We will have to see. And then ultimately coming down to my number 1. Can you guess what it is? That's what I want to know. Leave it in the comment section down below of what you could guess my number 1 could be. And now we're going to hit my number 1. Number 1, top of my X-Men list is X-Men First Class. I had a poster for the First Class group based on a comic book line hanging up on my door over here at one point. It ultimately got destroyed because I couldn't afford back then frames to be able to put it in. It's a great, absolute amazing film. It was a prequel show set after they did the first original trilogy, coming off the heat it took from X3, coming off the heat it took from X-Men Origins Wolverine, landing down in the perfect spot to tell an amazing story with a brand new cast and a whole different storyline, kind of retelling how these characters were growing up and how they were back in I think it was the 60s? Yeah, the Cuban Missile Crisis. So we got to see the amazingness that was the new actor playing Magneto, Michael Fassbender, the new Charles Xavier, James McAvoy, the new Mystique, Jennifer Lawrence. We got to see the introductions to characters like Darwin, Angel, Zazel, which is Nightcrawler's father, by the way, who made it with mistake and made Nightcrawler, but of course, Fox line was never going to introduce that like the X-Men cartoon did. I guess I'll just go screw myself, but whatever. We get to see the introduction to the brand new Beast, played by Nicholas Hoult, who is now our Lex Luthor and the new Superman coming up next year in 2025. If a lot of you actually don't know who Nicholas Hoult is, I saw him first in a UK series called Skins. when he was extremely young. He's played in a lot of younger roles over in UK at that point, but I fell in love with him from Skins, and I've followed his career since then. He's played in a lot of amazing movies, so him playing as this character was absolutely floored for me. Did an amazing job, and I absolutely cannot wait to see what this man does with Lex Luthor, because he looks insane as Lex Luthor from the stills that we've gotten so far. Of course, with the villain being Kevin Bacon, Sebastian Stan, the man who basically took um, Eric Lyncher into the internment camps and kind of raised him, and he kind of escaped away from all of that. And ultimately, his powers as kinetic, he basically can absorb kinetic energy, shoot it back out. Amazing, amazing villain. Ultimately, ending down with Eric Lyncher deflecting all the bullets coming his way and deflecting it into Charles Xavier, basically shoehorn, and that's the origin of how he was not able to use his legs anymore. He got a bullet in the spine, and absolutely at the end of the day, this has to end up at the top 5 because we got to see the characters that we know and love for the first time. We got to see new characters show up, not to mention Havoc. I forgot to mention Havoc. Scott Summers' older brother, which I don't remember if he was older or younger in the comics and in the X-Men Evolution or X-Men line. Fantastic character. Loved the actor who played him. But yeah, X-Men First Class, the way it told its story, brand new tale, new fresh ideas and everything, and it spawned a plethora of movies afterwards. Be one of the first X-Men films to really get 4 films in its run, not ending on its high note, but it still was Dark Phoenix was a decent movie for me. It just didn't hit my top 5. But X-Men First Class is going to be the end of my first. Honorable mentions, of course, we have the Wolverine, which did an amazing job at telling stories in Japan. I actually really enjoyed Dark Phoenix. X2 should have been on my list, but there were just so many other great films that had to end up on this top that I just know and love and everything like that to really just culminate what my top 5 would be. It took me a lot of time to sit down and just really think about my top 5. And honestly, a lot of it came like snap at the pace, but I had to really just fight that top 3. I really, really had to. But X-Men First Class was always going to be at my top 5. So what I want from y'all, I want you to say how you feel about my top 5. I mean, I know this is my opinion, so ultimately think about that at the end of the day, but I want to know your top 5 X-Men films. You could include Deadpool films if you want in there. It would ultimately change my mind. Both of them would have been in my top 5. Maybe not the second one. I didn't really like the second Deadpool movie as much as I liked the first one. But you can include them in yours. Just put those down in the comments down below. Let's have a discussion on that. And let's all just enjoy the amazingness that is going to be Deadpool Wolverine coming out in theaters this Friday. I'm going to see it tonight as this video is preparing. And let me know what you guys think about the movie too. But as always, thank you guys for coming in. Thank you guys for watching. As always, my name is Dead Poet, and I'll catch you guys later.